happens, if anything is done here? What should Britain and the EU be doing? We're joined now from Paris by Nataliya Narochnitskaya, former member of the Russian Parliament, and with me in the studio here, financial analyst Louise Cooper and Conservative MP Brooks Newmark. And you think there should be European, British-led sanctions against Russia?
I do. I think the first thing we should do is suspend Russia from the G8. Secondly, we should begin to put together a package of directed punishments in the form of economic sanctions, asset freezes, targeting specific companies controlled by Putin and his oligarch friends, and also visa restrictions on Putin and his associates so his family cannot move freely in Europe or the UK, and hopefully not the US either.
Ms. Narochnitskaya, do you think this would have any effect on Moscow? Indeed, the stock market did go down yesterday. It's a little bit back up today. The ruble fell, but that was going anyway.
Well, I don't think any measures of that kind are productive, but of course I understand also that the West is supposed to react somehow, but I would rather expect some negotiations, because whatever non-sufficient the justification President Putin used to explain his action in Crimea may seem to the some in the West, they are certainly better and better justified than bombing of Yugoslavia, attacks on Iraq and Afghanistan, what has been done to Libya and the Middle East, etc. So it's not the West to teach anyone in international law, non-interference, etc. And it was not Russia who drew Ukraine to such critical point when there is no legitimate government, because after 21st February the whole process went out of the legal field, and there is no revolutionary government who controls the whole country.
Right, let's pause it there.
The regions. So I mean, what about G8? Of course it has a public effect very much, but for Russian people that would mean that our guy is finally so good that bloody West doesn't want him to deal with him. I'm sorry to say so.
That's a good point to
because
pause.
his rating rose. Right. His ratings rose so much.
Natalia,
so
for
West
a moment, let's pause. I hate to interrupt you, because it's lovely to listen to you, but we've got to have to pause there for a minute. In reality, Britain is in a very bad position to issue sanctions against Russia. Is it not? Would it not be self-damaging?
Well, the big partner that Russia has is Germany, and the power in the EU is Germany. Be under no illusion. Germany is the country with the money to bail out the indebted, and Germany imports over 40% of its gas from Russia. The EU as a whole imports a third of gas and a third of its oil from Russia. Even though we're in slightly warmer winter, and even though, according to some estimates, we have in Europe big supplies, big stocks of gas, possibly up to 45 days, we cannot just instantly find billions and billions of dollars worth of oil and gas. We are far too economically dependent on Russia for our energy.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
It's just not going to happen. Merkel is not going to agree to severe economic sanctions.
And you are severely out of step with the document we saw going into Downing Street yesterday, which said, we're not going to do it, mate.
Well, as I said, that's up for... we heard the Foreign Secretary today on the statement on Ukraine and questions, where he said that, he will make up his own mind. There are lots of people giving advice. Advice is cheap. But at the end of the day, something must be done. And I think we saw with South Ossetia, we saw in Syria last year, that Putin, frankly, sticks two fingers up at the West, and something needs to be done. So what I am proposing are very targeted sanctions, and I think very targeted visa restrictions, so that it affects the people all around Putin, not necessarily using a blunt instrument on dealing with oil and so on.
I would actually say that Putin has somewhat shot himself in the foot. I wonder if he realised the Russian stock market would fall 11% on Monday. I wonder if he realised the ruble would be one of the worst performing currencies this year, down 11% versus the dollar. If you were a rich Russian oligarch keeping Putin in power, you potentially have lost 20% of your wealth in the last month. And I think that is a sanction. He has imposed a sanction on those that keep him in power.
Right. Natalia, why don't you tell Brooks Newmark, the British MP this end, why he shouldn't be pursuing sanctions against you?
Well, I think we have so much to do together, you know, chemical weapons in Syria, Iran a nuclear program that cannot be ruled out without Russia. Let us think more, not about sanctions against Russia, who just drew the red line. That was the message to the West. Don't even think that you might want to force us out of Crimea and from Sevastopol. Just imagine if happened the same things like in Ukraine happened in Mexico, with this prospect of Mexico joining Warsaw Pact. What would America do? Just immediately invade the country.
They wouldn't invade
let
Mexico.
Us think about,
Come on.
let us think about Ukrainian people. Let us sit down together and help work together a paradigm for constitutional reform. That
You've invaded a sovereign nation.
To be changed only by referenda. Let us think about not turning Ukraine
He's
into
got
a
some
battlefield.
answers for you, Natalia. Let's just hear
Natalia,
it
if you can hold on a second. You have invaded a sovereign nation. Just because there's a problem with your neighbour doesn't give you the right, as the neighbourhood bully, to go into another country, use your own soldiers to point weapons, shoot bullets in the air to stop the Ukrainians being on their own territory.
Okay.
You simply can't do that.
Natalia.
Well, let me see. If you declare that you are enhancing your military presence, if you don't surround somebody else's bases and don't control airports, it's not presence, it's just bluffing. So if you say A, you say B. That's clear for experts. Now we are talking for the public, of course.
Okay.
And Russian fleet and coastal infrastructure.
Natalia, I must pause you there. Just for a moment. Natalia, I must pause you there. Louise, in the end, we are dependent in the City of London on vast garchical resources. Oligarchs who have invested hugely here. There's a whole lot of interdependence.
There is, although the big one really is the energy markets, and that is far more in Europe than it is in the UK. I think the UK only imports about 20%
So we give
of
them
its gas.
sanctions, they could sanction against us.
Well, the other thing to remember is actually it is the EU that has the power. If you look at the amount that the EU trades with Russia, it's about 10 times larger than the amount that America trades with Russia. You know, it really is the EU that has the power, but it will not use it.
Louise Cooper, Brooks Newmark, and Natalia Narochnitskaya, thank you all three very warmly indeed.